Against billionaires and shitcoins, Surfer Jim stood tall. Comparing Bitcoin to real estate, he's more stoked than y'all. Surfer Jim, got under the billionaire skin. Surfer Jim, knows that Bitcoin always wins.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Surfer Jim to the podcast. Jim is a Bitcoin advisor, lifelong surfer, and entrepreneur. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Jim.
Paul, thanks so much. And thanks for putting up with my technical difficulties as a boomer. I don't know if it's me or my computer. And for the audience, we've spent the last 15, 20 minutes trying to get my camera to work, which works every other time I try it. So sorry about that, folks. But Paula, thank you for having me on. You seem like a deep studier or a deep learner of Bitcoin. I can tell by the other podcasts, the other guests you've had on. So I'm eager to give you my perspective, and maybe it'll help refine your own understanding of Bitcoin in some way. And hopefully the audience will take something positive away from it. So thanks for having me.
Well, I'm sure they will. I have heard you speak on Spaces, and we both attend Bitcoin Today Spaces sometimes, which is a wonderful group, a wide variety of topics. And I heard that you've been in Bitcoin for a little while. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to Bitcoin.
So like many other people, there was multiple touches, I would say minimum of 3 that I can remember. The first one was a young guy who mentioned Bitcoin, and he didn't really know what it was and was wondering if I knew what it was. And he was into online gaming and I wasn't. And he sort of thought it was somehow connected to that. And so I just dismissed it. But then I happened to be scrolling through Netflix or something when I used to own a TV many years ago, because I don't anymore. And I saw a documentary on Bitcoin and I thought, oh, wow, that's interesting. Wonder what that's about, because I had heard about it. And that documentary left me thinking, it looks cool and all, but it looks really complicated technically, because it was showing a lot of people doing mining and with computers and fans and lots of wires, in living rooms, and wives getting upset about it, and me going, yeah, I don't see me setting one of those things up, so that was my second touch. But the one that really got me, which sometime in 2016, I got myself a unlimited data plan on my phone. They were starting to get more popular, more affordable, and I started watching YouTube videos, initially not knowing what YouTube really was, but finding cool stuff on there, especially old music from like the 80s or even earlier. And I thought it was just the coolest thing to be able to pull up like old, videos from MTV when it first started or something. And I could listen to these old songs that I, let's say, didn't have a copy of anymore. And I learned about TED Talks. And one of them was a woman talking about Bitcoin, ultimately. After I learned what Bitcoin was, I went back and watched it and I thought, wow, I can't believe she got me, because she doesn't even know some stuff that's important. She said some things that I totally don't agree with. But the thing she said that caught my attention, and I've said this on many podcasts, I have run my own construction company for the better part of 36, 37 years. And I build custom homes. At least that's what I've been doing for most of my career. I now work in the Bitcoin space, but I've been running this construction company for a very long time. And I work in a place that's all summer homes. And we typically do the work in the winter when the homeowners aren't there, so that when they come back in the summer, they can enjoy their homes. And this requires a huge amount of trust. I learned very early on that if you break that trust, you could be out of business quick, because I got work from people who would recommend me, because whoever was recommending me felt that I came through and they could trust me, like I wrote a contract and I executed it and everything worked out. And so I realized early on, as I was building up that business, that you can't mess around with people and you got to follow through, and it's so much easier if they trust you and then they recommend you, and it just builds that trust. Anyway, the woman on the TED Talk said about Bitcoin, you can trust the Bitcoin protocol without trusting any of the people involved with it. And I just went, whoa, hold on. How is that possible? The Bitcoin protocol is written and maintained by people. And I just thought that's a pretty bold statement, but it's got me curious, because I recognize the value of trust and how it matters in something being successful, let's say. And of course, I'm sure you're aware that one of the main slogans in Bitcoin is "Don't trust, verify." And that's because Bitcoin was created in such a way that you can verify everything that matters, and you don't need to trust any of the other actors, because they will expose themselves as being bad actors through the cryptography that allows Bitcoin to work, the digital signatures and the hashing algorithms, all the things that are known elements of the Bitcoin protocol. And the way it's set up is such that anybody who wants to use the system, participate in it, whether it's just as a node runner or a miner, you can verify everything about the traffic on the network. You can verify everything about the network without actually ever trusting any of the other participants, because it's all self-verifying. I sometimes say to people when I'm trying to explain Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a system that is self-propagating, so it grows itself and no one can stop it. It is self-verifying and no one can stop that. If you run software that's in consensus, you don't have to ask anybody what the truth is. You can verify what the truth is and it will match everybody else's truth. So the system is self-verifying, and it's also self-regulating. And this is a tough one for many people. They don't understand. You wouldn't understand by that statement, but Bitcoin speeds itself up and slows itself down on its own. There's nobody turning a switch. It just happens. And those are very unique characteristics. It took me quite a while to learn what they were and then how they worked individually and how they worked in unison with each other. But once I got that, I grasped the concept of being able to operate in this system, but not have to trust the other actors that are also working in the system. So that's what got me. And that was, I started studying Bitcoin in 2016 and finally got the confidence to buy some in 2017. My conviction only grew deeper and deeper because I was very fortunate to find people that understood the system deeply enough, recognized all the trade-offs with every other cryptocurrency out there and why Bitcoin was unique and in its own category versus the rest of them. Because at first I thought there was some equivalency. I had to teach myself out of that because that's not correct. Bitcoin does stand alone. And there was a lot of opportunity to be sent down a different direction. But I had some good, smart people that were committed and understood, and I was able to tune into their different podcasts, and I feel it's been a huge benefit because so much has transpired over these years. There's a lot of people that come into this space and are completely misled by how things are, what things are, how they relate to other things. I'm alluding to the fact that there are 100,000 other cryptocurrencies, altcoins, some people call them. I prefer to call them shitcoins. None of them, ever, 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 like unequivocally, none of them will ever replace Bitcoin for what Bitcoin can do. None of them can ever be Bitcoin. As a matter of fact, I often say that Bitcoin is on one side of a technological wall, and every other altcoin is on the other side of that. This is not ideological. This is not just because people want it. No, there's a technological reason why those altcoins can never be Bitcoin. They can never have the same path dependency that Bitcoin went down to become what it is. Bitcoin is censorship resistant and decentralized because it took a path that decentralization is a function of that path. Had it not taken the path it took, it might have become centralized, which is essentially what every altcoin really is when you get down to it, among all kinds of other problems that they don't want you to really know about. Anyway, I've spoken a long time on how did I get into Bitcoin, and I've gone on a few tangents. So let me pull back here and let you say some stuff. Sorry.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, your tagline on X is Bitcoin, not blockchain, and that's what you're referring to. One of the reasons that Bitcoin is completely different is because there is no leader and we cannot print anymore, whereas the others can all be printed, more can be created, and there's a leader for almost every other one that
Pretty much.
we
Yeah.
know of. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it goes beyond that. So I say Bitcoin, not blockchain, because this idea that blockchain is going to solve problems is one of the most absurd things in the world. if you actually understand how the Bitcoin blockchain operates and why it has grown to take on the characteristics that it has now, the decentralized nature of it, the censorship resistant nature of it. See, this is one of the most important things in a monetary system. Can you be censored? Can your transactions be stopped? The way Bitcoin has grown, the way the mining industry around Bitcoin has grown, the way the nodes that run the Bitcoin software has grown, have all contributed to create those characteristics. The idea of a blockchain, a continuous connection in the record of transactions, the way a blockchain operates, let's use the Bitcoin blockchain as an example. The network is talking. Every node on the network is always talking and listening. Well, some don't talk, but they all listen. They want to know what's going on out on the network. They want to know if there's any new blocks. They also want to know what kind of transactions are out there. And all these transactions are flying around the network, and they all are potential transactions until they get put in a block. And so the Bitcoin that anybody ever owns is always just on the network. And it's on the network represented by an identical copy of the state of the network on every node. So every time a block is added, the entire network updates itself to decide if that new block gets added to their copy so that they stay in sync with the rest of the network. And of course, during that process, they're verifying everything individually, not ever trusting anybody. So this idea that you can have I like to call it a digital file. I've talked to some developers who don't like that way of saying it, but your Bitcoin is ones and zeros, and it's a finite length. So it's like to me, it's a file. It's a digital file. It represents a unique number, and it's got a certain amount of size to it. And that file is represented on the network. And everybody on the network recognizes its existence, how large of a piece of an original Bitcoin it might represent, parameters around these files, but they're just files that are out there on the network, essentially copied on every full node that's monitoring the network. And in order for you to do anything with that file, like what you back up, you say, okay, I got this file I have control over it. And if I tell the network I want to move it somewhere, the network will listen to me as long as I can prove some things. So I digitally sign it and I say, I'm going to send it from here to there. And that's me paying you some Bitcoin. So what happens? This digital file that's on this network that's copied all over the place. There's a message that goes out. And everybody that hears the message says, hey, you know that little digital file over there? Well, somebody says they control it and they want to move it. And I usually ask people to visualize a giant Excel spreadsheet, because every Bitcoin is just in another box on the spreadsheet. There's an infinite amount of boxes. And so, everybody knows that in box, A235, there's a little chunk of Bitcoin. And I just send a message out with a digital signature that says, I want to move it to some other box. And everybody goes, sounds good, but we're not just going to do it until everybody agrees. And that means that has to get into a block. So you've got these digital files. They're being moved around on a network where everybody that's playing in this little game can verify everything. But what else can you do with a Bitcoin? Nothing, right? You can just move it around on the network. But outside the network, human beings can put a value on those digital files. So I can give you a digital file and you might give me your house. And you might sign it over legally in the real world, and the deed changes at the county courthouse, and everybody recognizes I own the house, and all you got was control over a digital file on a network. That's all you got. That's all any blockchain ever can be, ever. So what do you do with a digital file other than money? If you try to say that digital file represents your house, and you say to me, I'll send you one digital file representing my house, and I'll send you a digital file representing a Bitcoin or more, you can get that Bitcoin on that network, and you can own it, absolutely, and you can know that you can. When I get your digital file of your house, I can't necessarily own it. I can believe you've transferred title over to me, but does the county it sits in believe it? Does the taxing authority believe it? If I don't pay the property tax, do I get to keep it? Or does some government entity come take it away from me? See, any asset in the real world cannot be tied to the blockchain, as people like to say, or any blockchain without a trusted third party on the outside, period, end of story. Nothing. Car registrations, gold, stock certificates, none of them need a blockchain, because the mechanism that a blockchain operates on that allows the entire network to recognize the truthfulness of the state of that network is only matters if the digital files that they represent have value that can be enforced, not in the real world, within the system. The enforcement takes place within the system, without government, without anybody overseeing anything. Every other thing, Michael Saylor wants to tokenize everything. Go for it, bro. I don't care if you can trade Apple stock 24/7 if people build a mechanism to do it, but it will not be enforceable at the protocol level without human beings intervening, because some human being has to decide how many stocks are there and who gets them. And somebody has to keep track of the title of those stocks, because they start out outside the blockchain. Anything that's outside a blockchain cannot get into the blockchain or be tied to a token in the blockchain without a human being on the outside forcing it to be so. Like, an authority has to say, I'm the final arbiter, and this person now owns the house that the digital token is represented by. I don't care that you sent it to that other person. We don't recognize the blockchain in the real world. So the only reason to have a blockchain, period, is to have digital files that can be moved around, and all the enforcement for those digital files happens within the system, not outside the system. So the only reason to have a blockchain is for money. And if you're going to have that, it has to be decentralized. It has to have network effects, grow around the world, all the things that Bitcoin was able to do in almost 17 years now that nobody else will ever be able to do. It's like trying to discover something twice. Once it's been discovered, it's been discovered. The idea of this blockchain concept and digital signatures and everything that makes Bitcoin work, when humanity saw it, it was the first time it was ever seen. And it could easily have been co-opted, corrupted, or destroyed when it didn't have any network effects and it wasn't sent all around the world with millions of people caring about it. Once it got to that point under the radar of governments, it was already too late to turn it off. So Bitcoin is unique. Blockchains are only good for money, digital money, and they will only work if they're truly decentralized and no one's in charge, like Bitcoin. I rest my case. Nothing will ever replace Bitcoin. I hope that makes sense to anybody listening, because I sometimes feel like I'm rambling and I get a little off topic, but I thought about this long and hard, and there is only one reason to do anything on a blockchain. All the other digital tokenizing of anything can just be done with a database, because you're going to have a trusted authority enforcing it. You always are going to. So anyway, there you go.
I think that was a great explanation. I love the example of the spreadsheet. And the other thing you brought up were the nodes. And it's funny because you and I couldn't get the camera to work, but we can run a node. We can operate Bitcoin pretty well. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to share that I'll be a speaker at BTC Prague 2026, the biggest and most influential Bitcoin-only event in Europe, from the 11th to the 13th of June. Come and join me to hear incredible speakers like Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Fred Fenixon, and many more, and connect with a community of true Bitcoiners. Get your tickets now before prices go up, and use my link below for a discount. See you there. You know, I want to go back to that. You said it has to be money because, as you know, Jeff Booth often says that it will fail as a store of value if it fails as a medium of exchange. So it is already money. Would you agree with that?
Well, yes, and it saddens me to come to the unfortunate realization that I don't think, at least I haven't seen a path yet to scaling Bitcoin to the entire world on a sovereign level where everybody could own their own UTXOs within the system. The
What
base
about
layer,
on layer twos?
I would encourage you to listen to a recent podcast between Pete Rizzo and John Carvalho. John Carvalho has been around a very long time. He's very smart. He knows a lot about this stuff. And I agree with him that all layer twos are not a scaling of Bitcoin UTXOs relative to individual humans on the planet. It's a scaling of trust. Everything in life is a trade-off of trust in some way. And layer twos are simply that. Essentially, you have to trust a whole bunch of factors that have to stay in play for your layer two Bitcoin to be yours, especially because most people using layer two, or Lightning being the predominant layer two protocol, most people using it are using custodial wallets. And so there, right there is a trust element. And so I was hoping, so not being technical enough, I was hoping that some combination of covenants, there are many different covenant proposals out there, which would require a consensus level change to the protocol, which requires essentially most of the world agreeing, which makes it close to unlikely any of these is going to happen. But I was hoping and believed for many years that if we had certain covenants added to Bitcoin, we could perhaps batch transactions even into the millions, so that people could actually own their own UTXOs, even though not everybody could make individual on-chain transactions. If they could be batched, perhaps you could service the whole world. But I think if I had John Carvalho sitting in front of me and I asked him about it, he would probably say something, yeah, but during the batching process, there's a trust element that has to take place. And even if that's not correct, I could see that as being a level of trade-off that would need to be made to use some type of batching service to get your transaction on the base chain. Bob Burnett from Barefoot Mining talks about it all the time. There's a limited amount of space in every block. There's a limited amount of blocks per day, per year, and you cannot have every human being making every transaction they do in their normal course of their day on the base layer. It's just, there's too many people, and like, there's just not enough room. There's just not enough room. You'd get one transaction every couple of years, each human would, So some kind of scaling would have to happen. And everything that's been looked at, proposed, worked on, even Lightning that works really well in so many cases, it's not pure sovereignty like when you own your own UTXO and you send it to somebody unencumbered and no one can stop you right on the base chain. So that makes me sad, because I was going to write a book once called Bitcoin is Inevitable. It's going to happen and no one can stop it. And there are elements about Bitcoin that I think are inevitable potentially, in terms of how it will, trying to find the right words, how to say it. Bitcoin is part of society now. And if it can't serve as cash for every person on everything they want to buy every single day, it can still serve as a valuable thing to humanity, even to the extent where, as much as I don't like this at all, to the extent where Bitcoin is the world's money, Bitcoin is held by custodians in banks, and fractions of Bitcoin are allocated to people in their accounts. And people work with banks and banking accounts all day long, and somebody else keeps track of the ledger for you. And so we trust all the time. I don't love this. This is what we're trying to get away from. Potentially, the only good benefit to that potential scenario is that if Bitcoin was the underlying security backing everybody's ledger in every little bank, in every holding company, whatever, you could have a situation where there's transparency on how much Bitcoin the custodian holds. And so you could force them into conditions where they can't rehypothecate. When I say force, if the market could create conditions where actors found themselves forced to operate a certain way, because if they didn't, they're either in trouble with the law or they lose their customers because nobody trusts them, you could potentially have a monetary system that's way fairer than the one we have now, because you would have a limited supply of underlying value, that every fraction of a value that's handed out to different people is still pegged to those underlying, in this case, units of Bitcoin, because nobody could just add more units and everything is verifiable. Could potentially have a system where the whole world benefits from Bitcoin, even though most people could never have that Bitcoin held sovereignly. If the systems were built well enough and humans somehow could police their fellow humans not to cheat, and we have so many mechanisms to try to keep humans from messing with other humans, and yet the people who run those systems mess with humans all day long. So, that's not a great system, but part of that's because the money's broken. the people who control the money control a lot of things because they can make new money. That's one of the big problems in this world. Bitcoin fixes that because there's only a limited supply. Can you fix all the other problems in society, the greed, the corruption? I don't know. I haven't game theoried the whole thing out. I think I dwell on it some days. I'm taking a walk and I just daydream about, okay, if this happened and that happened, what would, but it's very hard to envision what could we have a world where Bitcoin is everybody's money? What would that do to the nation state as we know it now? I personally think nation states, plural, all need to shrink if the world's going to get better, because the people that identify as government all over the world are the ones destroying the world more than anybody, in my opinion. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that they control large swaths of money and they get to pay people to do things in their name that aren't always good. Yeah,
Well,
I guess I feel a little bit like Jimmy from Rancho San Satoshi, because he can talk for long lengths of time and you just can let him go. I love the guy. We've been friends for many years. And I feel like I'm being like him right now. And he always, what does he call me? There's a Mexican word for somebody that has the same name as you.
yeah, well, interesting idea. Holding your Bitcoin in self-custody is an important step towards self-sovereignty, but writing your seed phrase on paper is risky. Paper can burn, fade, or get lost. MICROSEED helps you stamp your seed phrase onto a small steel washer. Buy the device once and use it forever. I love it. It's durable, precise, and easy to transport. Use my link below for 5% off. Now, back to the show. Jeff Booth says Bitcoin is repricing the world, and that in time we will develop better layer twos as technology develops. And I'm hoping that's true, because I do see Bitcoin makes the world a better place. I don't know about you, but as you've moved more into the Bitcoin world, has your life improved?
Yeah, I can't deny that my life has improved, not simply because I own Bitcoin, but because through understanding Bitcoin and the system and how it works, I uncovered a lot of things about the world around me that weren't obvious. I've said to people in the past that I've been a Bitcoiner since I was a kid. And I think that what Bitcoin does for many people is it allows them to grow into the person they really are, maybe even the person they've suppressed, or the person who they didn't quite understand. Why did they think and feel certain things about the world when they couldn't explain it? So I've never trusted authority ever since I'm a kid. If some authority said, do this, I would always say, why? Like, why? What's the problem? I'm over here doing this and I'm told to go do that or whatever. And so I've always questioned authority, and I've always questioned logic. So, I mean, I think this is where it comes from, in some way, I guess, born into me. But as a kid growing up, I was very fascinated by how things worked. And so if I couldn't tell how it worked, but I could open it up and look inside, maybe I'd figure something out. And I grew up in a world of mechanical stuff before computers and whatnot. But what I learned was how things worked because there were parts in there that logically went together. Like if I took something apart, sometimes I couldn't remember how it went back together, but I would look at what's not working. I'm going, okay, logically, this needs to do that. So wait a minute, that's in the way. Okay, so then maybe this is backwards. And I could literally think my way through something because I just kept looking for the logical path. If somebody built this thing, I took it apart and forgot how it goes back together. There's a logical way that this works, and I just got to remember it. And so I started to look at everything in the world that way. And I think it's how I ended up building custom homes, because to build a custom home, you got to be able to look at something on paper and go, okay, how do we build this? Like what approach do we take? You don't want to ever backtrack. So there's a whole logical process. And when I started to learn about Bitcoin, essentially what I had to try to do is take it apart technically without being able to see moving parts. It was, like concepts. But I was able to get like a picture in my mind about what was taking place within the Bitcoin network, how it was operating and why things were happening. And how could you get to this point where you didn't have to trust other people, but the protocol itself worked and it verified everything. So it was that natural desire to want to know how it worked that brought me down that path. Okay, so now to get closer to answering your question, you get exposed to stuff in this space, right? Different people, different ideas. One of the things which frustrated me as a boomer was so I'm listening to a podcast one day and someone says, oh, if you really want to learn about Bitcoin, you got to get on Twitter. And I went, what? That's for kids. What is that bullshit? I didn't do any of that. I don't have a Facebook account or LinkedIn or TikTok. None of that. None of that. I was like, oh, Twitter. I got to join Twitter now. But I reluctantly did it because whoever told me that, I respected them. And I thought, okay, what is this Twitter? And I start learning all these things. And you start learning different things from different people. You learn about different things. I was lucky enough to get a spot at like maybe there was 12 or 15 people at a private steak dinner in New York City with Seyfedine and Pierre Richard and a bunch of regular folks like me who nobody knew us, right? But I got to meet Seyfedine, and it was a carnivore thing, and I was just hearing about this. Oh, what is this carnivore thing? I've always cared about my health. Okay, so now I'm down that rabbit hole. But ultimately, the thing that really, got me was the money and why did Satoshi stay anonymous? Why did he offer this to the world? What problem does it solve? And it's a big, big problem with a really hard solution. And Bitcoin is the best thing humans have had so far, but I'm still concerned it may not fulfill the original promise of money for every single human every single day for everything they want to buy, unless we can build trust minimized second and third layer solutions that allow for that. Without that, it may be relegated to a commodity type asset where it just holds value because people want to hold it, just like people hold gold. They're not using it for money, and they're not making jewelry. They're just holding it, right? Because I don't know, because people are weird and they ascribe value to a shiny rock. Like, I mean, I understand the principles of money. I get why humans created the construct so we could trade and move away from barter and deal with the double coincidence of wants, all these great things I've learned by being in Bitcoin. But the thing I learned the most was that central banks and politicians that can make money out of thin air and then launder that money back to themselves through a myriad of different ways and get super wealthy and not really provide to society. If anything, they take away, they kill and destroy, and they allow things to happen. They go investigate themselves and they're always innocent. I mean, it just blows my mind. And then you come across a guy like Larkin Rose. A lot of Bitcoiners would benefit by listening to Larkin Rose or read his book, The Most Dangerous Superstition, which is the superstition of authority. Like, humans actually just accept that another human being has rule over them. Like, police officers can turn special lights on a special vehicle and force you to pull over. And if you don't do what they say, they can shoot you, and they're just other people. How did they get that right? Who gave it to them? No, nobody. They just took it. They just took it. Like, I never said to the people who run the IRS, no problem, take my money. It's all good. You can have my money every year. I accept taxation. No, I never agreed. Never once. But they got men with guns and I don't. And if I don't listen, they steal it. They put me in a cage. It's all insane. They're all just people, but they have special rights. They only have special rights because they have money we don't have. They can pay people to defend them. And they do. You know how good a job is getting for the government, like any job? They pay really well, right? So everybody loves to work for the government because it's got endless money. But the problem with that is these people become loyal to that income stream to the extent that they'll arrest you for not wearing a mask on a beach because the government said it's dangerous and you can't be outside by yourself with nobody anywhere near you. You're getting arrested because we have guns and we can.
Well, but
It's
technically,
insane.
we elect the government and then they make the rules.
Well, elections are a farce anyway, because does anybody really, if you get down to it, I'm going to elect somebody to rule over me. That's what I want. Yep, I'm down for that process. As soon as we get the guy I want, you are my king and I will bow to you. Whatever you say, I will do. Nobody actually wants that. No, people vote because they want things, and the system allows some guy to get in charge of a lot of money and promise a lot of things. And democracy is just two wolves and a sheep trying to decide what to have for dinner, right? If you're in the majority, you get to rule over all your neighbors. Essentially, indirectly. I didn't do anything. Well, you voted for the guy who put that guy in power, and that guy pulled me over and shot my dog because he was barking. It's insane, the connections that happen because people believe in authority.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
go down that road, but
that's okay. I mean,
pisses me off to no end. What has happened because of the corruption of the construct of money? Money is a great thing for humanity when people can't corrupt it or co-opt it. Money has been co-opted by central banks all over the world who get to make money out of thin air. I mean, just think about it. You go to take a mortgage to buy a home. A bank who has special permission from special people over there who shat themselves in diapers like all of us at one time, but now they have authority to say to the guy owning the bank, you can do this, but the other guy can't. Do what? Well, if somebody wants to borrow money from you, you can make it up out of thin air and give it to them, and we'll back you. And then they have to go to work for the next 30 years to pay you back, not just what you gave them out of thin air, but they're going to have to give you a bunch extra. And you have special privilege to do that. No, that is bullshit all day long. But that's the world we live in. It's not going to change overnight. I just rant like this so other people wake up and realize we are being ruled over by a bunch of parasites because they control money. Bitcoin is the only option humanity has to get out from under that disgusting thumb.
Yeah, it's definitely an opt-out system. And you and I met on Bitcoin Today Spaces, which is a great group of Bitcoiners.
Yeah.
Jimmy, as you mentioned, Terrence, Michael, Darkside Puncher, Lauren, and a lot of other great women and men who contribute. Not everybody has the same idea, and sometimes they talk a lot about treasury companies. Other times it's self-custody. What are your thoughts on that?
On which? Both of those two topics?
Yeah.
So, all right, let's start with treasury companies. I get anybody who has savings and wants to save it in Bitcoin. I don't care if you're an individual or somebody running a treasury company. Let's just really quick. Let's just identify when we say government, when we say treasury company, when we say the Fed, when we say any entity, Amazon, we are indirectly talking about human beings making choices. Always. There's a human being behind every choice that Amazon makes. It's not Amazon. Amazon is a corporation. It doesn't do anything. It just sits there. It's human beings under the umbrella of Amazon that make choices. And it's the same thing for all of this. So treasury companies, you're a company, you're out making money, let's say selling goods and services. You're not a treasury company per se, but you're a company and you have goods and services and you're making money and you want to save some of it. Smartest thing you can do is probably put it in Bitcoin. Unless you have a way to expand your operations and have a better rate of return on that capital investment than holding it in Bitcoin, the thing to do is just hold it in Bitcoin. If you're a treasury company and all you're doing is holding Bitcoin, you can sell people chunks of a representation of that Bitcoin, let's just say, right? 1 Bitcoin, 100 Bitcoin, whatever it is. You could sell people fractions of that through selling them shares in this company. And if the underlying Bitcoin goes up, and they hold shares in the company, it stands to reason the underlying shares would go up. There's nothing wrong with that per se, and I believe in free markets, and I see no reason why people shouldn't be able to do that. If you're trying to get exposure to Bitcoin and all you're doing is buying stock and somebody else is going to hold the Bitcoin, well, you don't really own Bitcoin. You have to trust them, to honor the value, or the market has to honor the value of the shares. But if the people holding the Bitcoin do something screwy, the value of the shares you hold might go down because the market doesn't like the people holding your Bitcoin. Well, you should have just bought the Bitcoin at that point. But then you take it a step further, like a guy like what Michael Saylor's doing, right? So he has the ability, because he's so large and he has built up such a treasury of Bitcoin, because he has a company that's publicly traded, that's large enough. He does have some operating income. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, whether or not they're enough to pay the obligations of the corporation, but they've been able to sell different types of corporate securities, whether they be preferred stocks or convertible bonds, or, he's got 4 or 5 different securities out there. And the value that they represent is the underlying assets of the company called Strategy, right? And that happens to be a lot of Bitcoin. And it seems, from what I understand, listening to the people in the market, that he's way over collateralized. That is, the value of the things he's offering to the world are backed by more than enough value in Bitcoin, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times the amount of the obligation that he's giving out there, because he's got the Bitcoin to back it up. If he had to sell it, he could, and make everybody whole. And there's, again, nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with a person doing that. As long as they're not cheating, I'm fine with it. And being a regulated company and all these issuances he's putting out, they're all regulated. I assume there's a level of transparency in here that nobody's getting directly rugged by any of this, right? So it's all good, no problem.
Not yet.
The problem that I don't, the thing that I don't like about it, which is not his fault specifically, and it's nobody's fault, and this was probably inevitable. The problem that I see here, what personally for me I don't like, is what he's doing is he's giving a place for people that need to invest in corporate securities, bonds especially, with a much better yield than is otherwise available out there in the market. And so people are finding a place to put their US dollars and get a return on them. And what that does is that allows the US dollar to live another day, potentially another year, another decade, longer than it should. It's already underwater by trillions of dollars. We owe way more than we have. To pay it off by printing it just devalues the rest. I mean, we're in a downward spiral. Lawrence Lepard talks about it. He wrote a book about it, right? Like, we're screwed. Okay, the US dollar is dead on arrival at this point, but the world doesn't feel that yet. People still value the dollar. Things are still priced in dollars all over the world. And the US government now has a really good opportunity to allow for people to do what Michael Saylor's doing and give the dollar another day to live, like another place for investors to go put their dollars and get what they consider a decent return. Again, this was always going to happen because the market structure was always going to create these conditions, and somebody was going to figure it out. Michael Saylor happened to be the guy. That's it. He's way ahead of everybody else, but other companies, once they get a big enough accumulation of Bitcoin, once they're publicly traded and they have enough strength in the marketplace, they can also offer these kind of securities. And then you didn't ask me about this specifically, but the stable coin thing, that we have out there in the world, somebody says, I'm going to create a token that's equal to $1 always, and it never fluctuates. And some smart people made digital tokens out of thin air called Tether, and people sent them actual US dollars, and they then turned around and bought US treasuries from the US government, and the US government is now paying the Tether Corporation interest on these US treasuries that they bought on the open market with a push of a keystroke on a computer. They didn't do any work. They coded this up. They pushed a button, created a digital tether. Somebody sent them a real dollar. They turned around and sent it to the government. The government's now paying them interest in real dollars, millions and billions every year, and they didn't have to work for it. They created something out of thin air, and it's allowing the US dollar to stay alive because they've given it a place to go. So I'm not in favor of those things. I want the US dollar to die. I don't want people to get hurt in the process, but the US dollar is evil. All fiat currencies are evil. They all should die, and they all will die over a long enough period of time. I hope I live long enough to see it. But I fight for a world that is free from the parasites that control the money of this planet and control all the wars and all the destruction and all the crap that they do. I think much of it goes away under a solid money standard, like a Bitcoin standard. But I suppose there's always going to be bad actors. There's always going to be people that get away with stealing and colluding and different things. But I still think that the overall system gets better. At least I'd like to think so. And I don't know. I'm an optimist by heart, or I'm generally an optimist. I'm a happy guy every day. I don't let things get me down. But what I've seen in my over 60 years of walking around, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, and I find a way to tie it all to the manipulation of money. And I just think if you can get rid of that, a lot of the problems fix themselves. I hope so anyway.
Absolutely. And that is why I talk mostly with people on this channel who are into self-custody. Yes, I know there's a place for the ETFs and the strategies of the world, but for individuals, the best option would be in self-custody. And you work with the Bitcoin Advisor, which helps people have collaborative custody. Is that correct?
Yes, we use the term collaborative security. We don't directly custody anybody's Bitcoin. We don't want to be labeled a money exchanger and get arrested or anything. One of our founders, Andy Pattinson, always says there are no perfect solutions, only trade-offs. And you'll find that's true in all of life for the most part. And of course, as a Bitcoiner for many years, having learned self-custody, having run my own Bitcoin node, I'm very familiar with the trade-offs. It's not hard to set up a Bitcoin wallet and send and receive Bitcoin on the base layer. It's a new skill you have to learn. It's not super hard, but it's different. You've never done this before, so you have to learn it. And for those who are interested in it, they take the time. And again, it's not that big a deal. The reason really why you want this is because Bitcoin is the very first thing on this planet that you can own that cannot be taken from you if you secure it correctly. There's nothing else. Everything you own can be taken. Bitcoin's the only thing that's literally unconfiscatable. And so there's something very powerful about that. And there's something in knowing that you have control over this thing that the world has ascribed value to. Okay, so all value is subjective. I understand that. The value is not in the thing. The value is always in people's heads, right? But collectively around the world, Bitcoins are currently valued at somewhere almost near $90,000 for a single one of these little digital files. If you happen to control one, somebody might give you that much fiat money right now. But that changes, as we know. So value keeps going up and down. Oh, shoot. Where was I going with this one? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. What were we talking about?
No, I mean, that was great. That
Yeah, but I
you
wanted to make a point, and now I don't know what the heck it was. I'm so
well, you
sorry.
were talking about the collaborative.
So, thank you. We were talking about custody, right? So when you own Bitcoin and you know you control it and no one can take it, it's really a unique feeling. But you have to become like a Bitcoiner. You have to feel that there's value in that owning your own money. And we can rattle off conditions around the world that make it really valuable. Let's say you're having to flee a war-torn country and you can't take anything other than you can carry. Well, if you got gold bars, good luck. Someone's stealing them. You can't get on a plane with them. Like there's a lot of things you can't take with you, but you can take your Bitcoin again, if secured correctly. And you do certain things, you can move your wealth and no one can take it. And that's really big. But a lot of people have never felt that their wealth was at risk. Most Americans have never thought, oh, I'm not worried. My bank account's always worked. No one's ever taken money out of it without me asking. Like where I live in the New York metropolitan area, people are way too comfortable. They do not see the writing on the wall. They do not see what's coming down the road that's going to make their life really difficult if we get CBDCs, digital IDs, any of this stuff. They're completely clueless. And most of them don't understand why they need Bitcoin because they have money, because they have a nice home, they have a good job, whatever. They don't even get it. Like it's really hard to convince people. You've got $500,000 sitting in securities. You should get 5% in Bitcoin. Oh, I don't need the Bitcoin thing. I'm doing fine. Dude, you don't know why you need it. You don't even know. And so this owning your own wealth, actually owning it, is like this is the first time ever humans had this. If you could have it and you can learn how to do it, like why wouldn't you? Like, but again, why wouldn't you? Some people wouldn't because they don't feel there's a threat. So as you mentioned, I work with the Bitcoin advisor, and what we do is we help people acquire Bitcoin if they don't even know how to get it. We certainly help them secure it, but we offer a service called collaborative security. And so what we're doing is we're taking advantage of protocol level rules. The protocol at the very base layer where everybody doesn't trust anybody and everything is verifiable individually, on that level, you can program Bitcoin to act certain ways. And so we have something in the ecosystem called Multisig, which is short for multi-signature. And when you are in control of some Bitcoin and you have one signature, one digital signature needed to move that Bitcoin, that's known as single sig, where you have one signing device. We often call that a hardware wallet, but that signing device is the key to you talking to the network. It's saying to the network, hey, I got this private key that's connected to that Bitcoin, and I can prove I have it without showing it to you. I'm going to give you a digital signature. I can only create this digital signature with that private key. And along with my public key, you can tell that I have the private key without knowing the private key. And you could then tell that I have authority to move this Bitcoin. And that's how the system works underlying, right? And everybody only accepts transactions that are digitally signed with a proper signature that's tied to a private key that can be known but not seen. And that's great if you're comfortable controlling that money and being the only person or potentially, well, so here's the trade-off, right? Let's just say you have the single signature key. You're going to back up that key by writing a bunch of words on a steel plate, right? Because it can't be burned or destroyed in floods or whatever. Okay, so that's great. So now you have a signing device that has the private key on it, and you got a metal backup plate. For anybody in Bitcoin, you all know what I'm talking about. If you're new, look it up. It's just a way to back up your private key. Anyway, you put that somewhere that only you know about, right? Because if you tell anybody, they can dig it up, put the private key into a new signing device, and get your Bitcoin. So you are what we call a single point of failure. If you lose the signing device, the backup key, forget where you put it, whatever, your Bitcoin's gone, right? That's it. But you can tell somebody where it is. You can tell your spouse, you can tell your kids, hey, I got this Bitcoin. Here's the signing devices in the safe. The metal plate's buried in the backyard, under a rock, next to Fido's grave from last year, like whatever, and your family all knows, right? And, that's great, but that's a trust trade-off because I don't care if they're blood related. Some people will rip off their family. It's sad. Kids, parents, there's bad people out there. It's so sad to say it, but can you even trust your family? I don't know. Like some people, absolutely. And some people, hell no. And they know it. And they're laughing about it right now as I'm saying this, right? So what do you do with your backup, with your one backup? Like, how do you know that your Bitcoin's never going anywhere because you control it and don't worry and you got it all figured out? What if you want to move to another country? How do you get on a plane with your signing device and your metal backup seed plate and take it to another country and get through customs without them questioning what it is? And what if they take it? And now what do you do? Now your Bitcoin's gone, right? So single sig is great, but like I said, there is no perfect solution, only trade-offs. So what we offer is a multi-sig security setup where we hold one of a quorum of keys. We are what is known as a professional key agent. So you can go out, set up your own multi-sig. All the information is out there on the internet. You don't need anybody else. Go buy a couple of hardware wallets and set it up yourself. But then you have to go somewhere with these. The typical multi-sig is 3 keys and you need 2 to sign a transaction. So 2 of 3 multi-sig, very common. So let's say you set that up yourself, and you can. There's enough instructions out there. You can go to our website and learn how to do this, right? Like we literally give away what we do. Technically, like you can go and do it yourself. But you're still a single point of failure because you have now 3 keys and you got to figure out what to do with them. Can you give them to 2 other responsible people that won't collude with each other and that won't lose them in case you lose yours? So you can call them both up and go, all right, fuck, I screwed up and I need both of those keys. I remember that. Oh, that was years ago. I have no idea where I put it. Yeah, that's going to work out really good. So if you're going to do your own even if you're going to go hire a company and they're out there, they'll set up your multi-sig and they'll give you 2 keys. And that's better than nothing, but you still have 2 keys to now deal with, and you got to find 2 responsible people that are going to hold them. What we do is we work with multi-sig providers who create the multi-sig. They hold a key, we hold a key, and the client holds a key in our typical setup. And it's a trade-off. Absolutely. Your Bitcoin purists are going to go, no way. You could collude with the other key holder and steal my Bitcoin. And in theory, they're right. Absolutely. But in practicality, that's absurd. All right. We are a professional corporation with advisors all over the world. The multi-sig providers that we work with are the same. They're big. They got a big footprint. They don't need to get sued from stealing your 2 Bitcoins when they're helping people control thousands. Like, there's no incentive for us to collude with the multi-sig provider to take someone's Bitcoin. But you'd have to get over that hump. You'd have to recognize it's a trade-off. So what we find is our typical client is somebody who has learned about Bitcoin, understands a lot of these trade-offs, understands they do want to control their own Bitcoin, but they do want some kind of backup. They don't want to be that single point of failure. And then they go, okay, could I trust these 2 corporate entities to be professional key agents instead of calling my brother Joe and my uncle Bill and give them a key each and cross my fingers, right? So we believe there's a market for our service for a lot of people that don't even own Bitcoin yet, because when they get their Bitcoin one day, they're going to figure out how they got to secure it. And they're never going to. What I find is the longer Bitcoin's around, the less new Bitcoiners want to become like a cypherpunk, like get all the way deep down into the ethos of Bitcoin and what it means to have sovereign money and screw the state and fiat needs to die. Now, they're not going that deep. The longer we get down the Bitcoin road, the more shallow people get into Bitcoin. They just get some and they're okay with it they get the ETF. They don't really even get it yet. But then
Unless of course things fall apart, like you said, it might get to that.
there's always a percentage of Bitcoiners that get into Bitcoin, they own it, and then they want to know more about the thing they just bought, and they keep going. There's always some percentage, and then there's others, and we see them all the time. We have a lot of high net worth individuals. They just want to get exposure to Bitcoin. They've recognized, okay, I don't want the ETF. I want to own the real Bitcoin. Oh, there's this service, and they back me up, and good. And these people have so much money, and they trust entities all day long to manage their wealth out there in the world, whether it's a property management company, it's their broker managing their stock portfolio, it doesn't matter. They're fine with that. So they're absolutely fine with giving us a key in a quorum of 3 keys and going, this is awesome, man. If I screw this up, I just call these guys. And then the biggest benefit, I think, well, one of the biggest benefits we have that a lot of our clients is part of the reason they hire us is because most people that are Bitcoiners are the Bitcoiner in the family. That is to say, most of the rest of the family is clueless. The spouses many times are completely clueless. They wouldn't know what to do with a hardware wallet if you hit them in the head with it. And so we're big on inheritance planning with our system. And so typically we're going to want to provide our clients with some information that they could weave into a will or a trust in some way that if upon their passing, their family, looks into the documents and goes, oh, look at this. We got to call these Bitcoin advisor guys. Dad had some Bitcoin with them. And they call him. They don't know where he put his hardware wallet. They don't know nothing. They just know to give us a call. We look up the account. We get the death certificate. We verify everything. And we make sure the Bitcoin gets to that guy's family the way he wanted it to. And we've had, unfortunately, 3 of our clients have passed away. And we haven't lost a sat yet. And we never plan to. So, that's one of our things is that's a really big deal is to make sure that the family gets all that Bitcoin that Bitcoiner was saving for them, especially if they can't be alive to, enjoy it with them. We think that our system is a good trade-off for the right people that have, and we have a lot of high net worth individuals. So they're coming to us with, sometimes millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. That's a good amount of money, even though they may have tons of millions more. They still don't want to lose the, 2 million in Bitcoin they just decided to buy for each of their grandkids or whatever. And so we help them with all that, and they sleep much better at night. And our statistics show that for everybody that joins us, they increase their Bitcoin holdings somewhere up around 50% in the first year. And one of the reasons Peter Dunworth has said, I know you've interviewed Peter, he said that people, they get so comfortable knowing that the risk has been mitigated so much that they're not going to lose their Bitcoin, that they feel like it's no big deal to get more. Like it's okay now to get some more. Spouses are all like, all right, well, it's protected now. Cool. We can get more then. There's a lot that goes on in family dynamics and different people with different knowledge base. You get the crazy Bitcoiner and the rest of the family, well, he just thinks they're nuts until they see, 5 years later, hey, we're doing good on that Bitcoin thing. Oh, I'm glad you got some. So anyway, I can ramble on, but I think we offer a really awesome service to the right people. Again, there's no perfect solution. It's always trade-offs. And for the people that, are interested in what we do, hit me up, send me a DM on Twitter or whatever. And I'll be happy to get on a call with you and explain the whole thing.
Well, thank you, Jim. You explained that very well.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And we're up at the hour, so I am so glad we at least got to chat. I'll have to throw
Me too. I'm so sorry about the camera thing.
Yeah, I would love to see you, but we'll throw up some cool
too.
pictures maybe if I have time to add them.
If you need me to send you a screenshot to put up, let me know. I'll send you something.
Sure. And just tell us where people can find you.
Yeah, well, if you listen to this whole interview, you heard me say earlier that I'm not on social media, the only one, because I was convinced to join X. So it's a Surfer Jim W on X and or Twitter. And other than that, you could send me an email, surferjim at the Bitcoin Advisor. That's advisor with an ER.com. So happy to answer any questions about what we do. And you could surf the internet and find me out there all kinds of ways. Paula, are you aware of the Ballad of Surfer Jim, the song that was written about me?
No, you have a song about
My goodness. Yeah, I got my own song.
Yeah, so play it.
Yeah, well, so this is one of these things, man. I've had such a crazy, wild journey that I got into this online scuffle, so to speak, with this guy Chamath Palihapitiya. Many people know who that is.
Yes.
And he was kind of mean to me, and the Bitcoin community got behind me, and they really they let him know that that wasn't cool. Surfer Jim's a good guy. I don't know. It was really
Cool.
unbelievable. The amount of love that I felt was just off the charts. And then a guy wrote a poem, and then a guy turned it into a little ballad on his guitar, and then it got turned into a sea shanty. Yeah, so
I
there's
mean, I think I heard it, but I didn't know it was about you.
yeah, it's
That is
one of those
cool.
things, and
Wow.
then so I got people I've got to interview Server Jim, so I got on all these podcasts. People just like, who is this guy? So I just get to talk
Okay.
about Bitcoin. It's just been a wildest ride. You
That
no idea.
it
This
is.
is the only reason. Look, the only reason I'm here is because all this path that I took. When Terrence was talking about me on Spaces the other day, and he mentioned I'm a Bitcoin educator. Well, ultimately, what happened was people would ask me for my opinion, and I would have a conversation like this with you. And some people go, "Oh, he seems like he knows what he's talking about." And so I'd get invited to this thing and that thing. I've talked at conferences. I've done, like workshops to help people learn. And these guys know way more than me in so many areas, but I know a lot more than new people for sure. Like if you're new within a year or two, probably I know more than you about Bitcoin or some aspect of it, and maybe I could help you out. So I took on the role of an educator because I simply wanted to help people understand Bitcoin. I figured, well, I needed help. I'm happy to talk to people about it, and it just kept going. And then Spaces came around, and there was a guy named Craig who had a daily Space Bitcoin 101. And I went on there every day because he was trying to learn and everybody was new. And I'm like, well, I could bring some value here. And that's where, somebody like Terrence, he heard me over and over again. And now he's doing it. He's now the host instead, right? So we switched roles, but it's just grown over time. Even the guys at Bitcoin Trading Cards thought I was cool enough so I got my own freaking trading card now, the Surfer Gym trading card. There's 500 of them out there. I'm like, oh my God, this is
Cool.
insane.
Well, we're gonna have to
Anyway,
do this again when we can see you, but
yeah,
thank
well,
you
thank you.
so much for joining me today. It was
I
cool.
appreciate it. Thank you, Paul. You have a great day.